And I just want to say before we begin, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone for you taking the time, making the effort, and doing whatever it takes to invest in your personal and professional growth and success. I just want to say a big thank you also to the team at Iconic Offices, to Christina and also Saoirse for always giving me this amazing opportunity to be able to present, to share knowledge and all that, and also organizing a series of other events as well. So do check out what's happening on the calendar moving forward. There's definitely a lot of amazing things coming up. So let's jump straight into things because we do have quite a bit of content to cover. So what are we going to touch on today? So the fundamentals of time and energy management. So before we started this session, I was having a quick chat with Saoirse, and we just mentioned that it's already March 2022. So, you know, in the grand scheme of things, if we are not careful, time can go by really quickly. So time and energy management is not just about ensuring that you have a productive day, that you are effective and efficient in what you do in your job, but it's also making sure that we live our lives with meaning and purpose. So I'm going to touch a bit on that as well. Okay, so a few things on the housekeeping side of things before we jump into the content. So number one, take notes, take as much notes as you can. So whether you have an old school hard copy notebook or notepad, that'll be good. Or if you prefer to take down notes on your tablet, your iPhone, on your computer in digital form as well, go for it, because we will be covering a number of frameworks, tools, theories, and also sometimes I might go off on a tangent and share some insights. So we do not want to miss out on those learning moments. That's number one. Number two, let us put aside all distractions. Sometimes when we are tuning in on virtual events, it's easy to have multiple tabs open. And if you have multiple screens, you can have different things at different places. So I think the best way for us to get the most out of this session is just to give it our 150% because we are all here to learn from one another. And number three, do engage and ask any questions at all. So feel free to unmute yourself if you're comfortable. If not, you can pop in any thoughts, ideas, or questions in the chat, which I have open as well. All right, so feel free to just chime in, share your thoughts as we go through different parts of the content. Okay, so first things first, can I get us all to open your chat box and just type in where you're tuning in from, like which part of the world are you in? So currently I'm based in Melbourne in Australia. It's 10 p.m. right now. So we've got people from Ireland, from Norway, very nice, from London, Dublin, UK. Oh, very nice. Okay. Amazing. Thanks so much for joining us. And I mean, like, it'll be nice to meet everyone face to face eventually, which I think we can do already. But nevertheless, doing this virtually allows us to cross borders, you know, and we are actually able to do this in the comfort of our own homes. So there are definitely a lot of benefits to virtual events as well. All right, so next up, what do we have? Okay, so as we go through different ideas, concepts, and theories, and also frameworks in this session, so if we've come across anything that is a fresh insight or revelation to yourself, feel free to pop in AHA into the chat. All right, and if we come across something that it is maybe a wake-up call, if it's something which we realize we've done wrong so far, or if it's a good reality check, feel free to pop in OMG. All right, so will be really nice to see how we respond to different things, because for some of us it might be a gentle reminder, some of us it might be something we already know, but for some of us it might be something totally new. All right, so let's do this as we go along. So if you're wondering who's this person talking to you all across the other side of the world, let me just briefly share some things about myself. So had the chance to speak on the TEDx stage twice. I think it was 2018 or 2019. So currently in my day job, I work as one of the HR directors for this organization called OSF Digital. And currently I'm based in the Australia region. So that's the ANZ Geographical Business Unit. So OSF Digital is one of the leading digital transformation agencies in the world. And outside of my day job, I had the chance to travel to different parts of the world as an international speaker, just sharing different ideas in terms of personal growth and development. So 12 plus countries, 12 plus cities. And that was where I got the chance to meet with the wonderful people at Iconic Offices over in 2019. All right, so I'm also featured on different media outlets. And during COVID itself, I actually made it a point to take on my careers counseling credentials. So like this virtual environment, even though there are so many challenges around us, there are also a lot of things that is within our control. So that is something which I'm proud that I have checked off despite the lockdowns and despite COVID. So apart from this, I'm an author. I do run a lot of ultra marathons previously before my physio told me to take a little, be gentler on my legs. And on the side, I also do a lot of trading on the crypto market and also on the options and the derivatives market as well. All right, so I had a chance to coach with clients from EY, Deloitte, and ANZ Bank as well. Oh yes, so thanks so much for popping that into the chat, Claudine. So anyone who wants to connect on LinkedIn, just feel free to pop in your link over there, and then we can definitely stay in touch. So definitely had a chance to speak at different places around the world. So the top left-hand side of the screen is on the TEDx stage in Melbourne. The top right-hand side is with the mid-level managers and engineers over in the Tesla office based in Melbourne. Bottom left is with the team members over in the Google office in Singapore. And bottom right is one of my favorite ones. So that was part of the African Youth Leadership Summit, which was held a few years ago over in Marrakesh, which is in Morocco. So definitely a privilege to be able to meet with different people. So as much as I'm speaking a lot today, it's also about learning from each other. So feel free to pop in any ideas or any thoughts into the chat as we go along. Okay, cool. So who is ready for the content for today? Are we all excited? I'm actually really excited. There's quite a bit of things which we want to go through together, right? Very nice. So the 4 key sections which we'll cover today. Number 1, the importance of time and energy management. So why is it so important for us to pay attention to this, right? That's number 1. Number 2 is what actually matters to us. So because everyone values different things differently. So what actually matters to you as a person, as an individual, right? As a member in society. Number 3, we're going to talk about some basic handles and tools which you can use to better manage your time. And number 4 is something which is really interesting. So how we can actually manage our energy. So it's not just about the time we have, but also how we manage our energies. Because if we run out of fuel too quickly, it doesn't matter how much time we have, all right? We can't utilize our time to the maximum potential, all right? So time and energy management, they are both important. So first section, so importance of time and energy management. So would anyone like to share with me why managing these 2 resources are so important? So why should we better steward our time and energy? So Saoirse says to avoid burnout. That's true, because life is very busy, can be very chaotic. And Matthias, for your overall well-being, maximizing productivity, harnessing your potential. Yes. So those are very, very, very true and very good responses. So thanks so much for sharing that. But if we look at the grand scheme of things, it's really important for us to manage our time and energy. Why? Because we live in a world that is very, very complex. Definitely the nice way to put it is we live in very interesting times. It is very volatile. Anything can happen at any time in the world. So looking what's happening in the Eastern European areas, regions, we already see that people can be going through very challenging times. And over the past 2 years, with respect to COVID, the lockdowns, restrictions, and all that. So we've been through a lot as humanity as well, right? So coronavirus, economic volatility, potential crashes in the economy, inflation, rate hikes, protests, pollution, global warming, climate change, disasters. Sometimes when you open up the newspaper, it can be very, very overwhelming. There's just so much information. So sometimes mass media, MASS, can sometimes feel like mass media, like MESS, where it's really messy. There's lots of things going on. So definitely it's really important for us to guard our minds, make sure we steward, we discern the kind of information we take in, just like how we watch the kind of physical foods which we put into our bodies. We also want to pay good attention to the mental, intellectual, and emotional information which we feed into our systems, right? So managing our time and energy is really important, because if we don't do it, it's easy to get overwhelmed. It's easy to feel hysterical. It's easy to feel discouraged. It's easy to go into a downward spiral of despair sometimes if we're not careful, right? So this is on the grand scheme of things. And then if we look at in our immediate world in itself, all right? So not just our outer world, but our inner world, there can also be a lot of things happening. So life can really, really be very busy. It can be very hectic, lots of commitments, lots of things happening on your plate. If you're working at home, if you have a family, if you have kids, managing their schedules, making sure that they take care of themselves, making sure that they attend their online lessons, making sure that they focus and all that. So sometimes we can feel very scattered, and this picture of this mom, it's such a great example. So on one hand, she's trying to take care of her kids, I think making sure that they are eating their food, having their meals, their proper meals, while she's maybe checking her phone, catching up with friends, or maybe even catching up on emails. So multitasking. Sometimes the boundaries are very blurred. Like if you work at home, you also sleep at home, you also have your recreational activities at home as well. So the boundaries can really be very blurred. So it's really important for us to take care of that and be aware of it as well. So social media as well, if you go onto Facebook, you go onto Instagram, there's different content from different places, paid media, advertisements, and all that. And then if we look on our career side of things, there is the point of this robot is that the threat of AI and automation is still there. It's not really the buzzwords right now, but it's still something that's very real. And then gas prices, like the cost of living is only going to go higher. Things are going to get more and more expensive. Affordability, school affordability, living expenses, housing affordability, and all that. Yeah, so like a lot of things can be thrown onto our plates, like managing your health, your own individual well-being, managing your family, managing your relationships, managing your household, managing your career, and all that. So it can get also very daunting, within our inner world itself. So this is really interesting. I found this screenshot, and this is the Screen Time app. If you have an Apple iPhone, it's really interesting. So it actually helps you to track how much time and attention you've been paying on different applications on your mobile phone. All right. So it gives you some of the stats on what you've been browsing through, what you've been looking at, and it can be actually very revealing and very confronting sometimes, because if we're not careful, sometimes we do a bit of mindless scrolling if we want a bit of mental downtime, and then we end up on Instagram for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and all that, and suddenly the time is gone. So got to be really, really careful. All right. So a lot of things happening in our outer world, a lot of things can be happening in our inner world as we try to juggle the different facets of life as well. And this last slide, at least for this section, all right, time and energy management. So essentially when we are managing time, we are also managing our lives, because managing our time is managing our lives. So at the end of the day, we will all grow old. At the end of the day, we'll come to the end of our lives. And like we mentioned earlier at the start of this session, it is already the 3rd of March, 2022. And it felt like just yesterday we were celebrating New Year's Day and also exchanging presents over Christmas. So if we are not careful, it's going to be Christmas 2022 again. So time can actually go by really, really quickly, you know, like the past 2 years, especially across the pandemic. For a lot of us, it honestly felt like a blur. You know, so we got to be very deliberate and got to be very strategic and intentional on how we live out our days. You know, if not, the days would just go by, and then we are 80, 90 years old, sitting down on that bench, you know, or on the rocking chair at our backyard, and then just pondering on life. And by that time, you know, it might be too late to actually seize the opportunities around us. Right. So therefore, we need to make sure that we take care of our immediate needs and priorities, but also bear in mind the bigger picture. Okay, so this is why time and energy management is so important. So just for us to get into the right mindset and the right headspace. So which brings us to section number 2, what matters to you? So essentially at the end of the day, whatever we want to achieve, the goals, the dreams, the aspirations, and the desires which we want to strive for, it's not really a matter of time, energy, or money. You know, sometimes we say that I didn't manage to achieve this, or I didn't manage to do that because I didn't have enough time. You know, I don't have enough time, or maybe it's too expensive, or I don't really have enough money, or, you know, I had a long day, I'm really exhausted, I'm really tired, I'm really just ready to just hit the sack and call it a night and all that. So that's true. You know, sometimes we need to be aware of our mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual state. But at the end of the day, whatever we want to achieve, it's not really a matter of like mentioned over here, time, money, or energy. It's actually more of a matter of priorities. Okay, so what do we mean by this? So essentially, it means that the why is greater than the how plus the what. All right, so for those of us who are taking down notes, if you only take down one thing, write this down. Okay, so the why is greater than the how and the what. So what does this mean? This means that the purpose for doing something is the most important, because once the why is defined, once the why has been established, once the why is clear and compelling, the how and the what will usually take care of themselves. So let me give you some examples. If you are, if securing the client or delivering that project report, if your career depends on it, you will do whatever it takes to churn out that report, come hell or high water. All right. And another example, if you're a parent and if your kid is sick and they are crying to you, crying out for help, you will do whatever it takes to run to their rescue. You will run through walls. You will suddenly transform into a superhuman. All right. So because the why is really, really strong, it compels us to actually do things which we might not usually do. It might actually push us to really operate beyond our usual limitations. All right. So this can be for good or for bad. You know, like if people go into drugs or alcohol, they can also do crazy things. So so what the why is really, really important. Okay, so once you have solidified your why, the how and the what will usually take care of themselves. So what does this actually mean for us? So how does this actually apply to you and to me? Okay, So let's talk about this story. So once upon a time, there was this professor who, oh yes, thanks so much for sharing that. So Simon Sinek, the golden circle, as he says, always start with why. Exactly. So back to this picture. So once upon a time, there was this professor who wanted to explain the concept of time management and priorities to his class of students. So in the lecture theater itself, he had a glass jar, all right, and then he asked all of the students to pay attention. So what he did was he actually filled up the glass jar with sand, okay, and then but the issue is once he filled it up with the amount of sand, no matter how he tried, he can't seem to put in the small pebbles and also the big rocks because the sand occupied all of the space. Okay, so yeah. However, he took an identical jar, and what he did differently this time was he filled it up with the big rocks first. Right, so the big rocks actually went all the way to the brim of the jar. And then he asked his students, is this jar full? And then all of them said yes. Okay, then what he did next was he popped in the pebbles into the second jar. And then so the pebbles just went in through the gaps between the larger rocks. And then he shook it a little bit, and then they all fell under the brim of the jar. And then he asked the students, is this jar full? And then he said, and then they all said yes. So what he did next was he took an equal amount of sand and started to pour into the second jug. And then he shook it and shook it and shook it, and all the sand settled through the large boulders and through the pebbles until it was flush with on the brim level. And then he asked the students, is this full? And then they all said yes. So the whole point of is this, you know, if we get the order wrong, it's hard to fill up the jar. So if you put in the large rocks first, then the smaller stones can fit around the larger rocks. And then after that, you can still have, you actually have space for the finer sand. However, if you start with the sand first, the sand will fill up most of the jug, and then you have little space for the small rocks and even less space for the bigger rocks. Okay, so this is the lesson, not about sand, not really about rocks, but about priorities. All right, so the analogy is the bigger rocks are the bigger priorities in our lives, in your life, in my life. And then the pebbles are like the medium importance items. And then the sand is more of like the trivial stuff. All right. So the question which we need to ask ourselves, and if you're taking down notes, write this down. So what are your 5 big rocks? So whether it's in your personal life, whether it's in your marriage, whether it's in your family, whether it's in your career, whether it's you as a business person, whether it's you as an entrepreneur, whether it's you as a manager, an executive, a professional, start to ask yourself, what are your 5 big rocks? Because once again, if we go back to the jug example, if we are not careful to start with the big rocks first, if we just keep pouring sand in and obsess ourselves with trivial matters like going on social media, attending to gossip and attending to news and all that, those things will always be around us, and those things can actually take up a lot of space and time. All right, so we always need to make sure that we focus on our big rocks. So how do you identify your big rocks, right? So some of the key questions we can ask ourselves are, number 1, what are my values? So what do we actually value? What do we treasure? What do we hold in high regard? Do we treasure relationship? Do we treasure ambition? Are our values people-centered? Are our values results or performance or community or service? So everyone has different values. There is no right or wrong answer. So we need to do some introspection and self-reflection to actually identify our values. Right, so that's the first question. The second question is to ask ourselves, what actually brings value? So what we mean by this is, what are things that, what are some of the tasks and activities that can actually bring value to the table? All right, because we don't want to obsess ourselves with too much of the noise and distractions or things that just end up in a lot of busy work. Because there is a big difference between busyness and productivity. Right, so this is another key point to write down. So busyness is not equals to productivity. Okay, and last but not least, what moves the needle forward? So are the things that we devote our time, energy, and attention to actually making a difference? Is it actually moving things forward? Or are we doing it just because we are told to do it? Are we doing it just because we want to feel occupied or to just look busy and all that? Right, so these are some of the things which we really need to sit down and ask ourselves, so actually find out what your big rocks are. So one handy framework which we can use is this. So looking at the strategic side of things, so starting with the strategy, then the tactics, and then the operations. All right, so the big picture things are things on the strategic level, and then you go into the more the medium level details. So that's on the tactical side of things. And then if you go to the finer and more granular details, that's more on the operational side. So an example is this. So in the grand scheme of things, for example, if you're very driven in your career, so maybe this could be a relevant example. So the bigger picture goal will be, if you looking to be promoted to becoming a business development manager because you value success and ambition, and you also want to use this as an avenue to better provide for your family. Right? So this is a very clear, strategic, high-level goal. Right? So this is a great start, but we need to translate it to executionable details, right? So on a more tactical level, so what does this mean? So in order for you to be eligible to be promoted for that bigger role, what do you actually need to do? So on the tactical side of things, you will need to secure $1 million worth of clients this year, and to mentor and to cultivate 2 junior account team members, for example. So this could be tied to your KPIs or your targets and matrix and all that, performance matrix. Okay, key result areas or key performance indicators. And then on a more granular level, on the operational level, so what does this look like? So this looks like on a day-to-day basis, you need to have 5 presentations to prospects a month. You need to have 5 meetings a week, and you need to do 10 outreaches per day. All right. And on the team development side of things, you need to have one-on-one coaching calls every fortnight with your 2 mentees. All right, so you can see that on the higher level, we have the strategic goal. Then we break it down into the more tactical goal, and we break it down further into the more operational targets. All right, so you can see that it's very nice to really dream big, have a great and grand vision, but we also need to bring ourselves back to earth to actually make that dream happen. All right, so strategic, tactical, and operational. All right, so this is really important because if we don't take care of the strategic side of things, if we're just purely obsessed with the operational side of things, we can be just churning through work. But is it actually aligning with the bigger picture? Is it actually getting us to somewhere meaningful? Right, so that is why we need to always measure ourselves and check in, whether we are on the right track or not. Okay, so that is section 2. So section 3, let me just go through some tactical tools we can all use to better manage our time. I won't spend too much time on this section because I want to actually devote more attention on energy management, because we have more control on that space, but we'll see how we go. Okay, so the first thing you can do to better manage your time is, number one, eat the frog. So what do we mean by eat the frog? So check off the toughest and most challenging thing to do in your day. So if you have a to-do list, so every day at work, I have my to-do list for work. And every day in the morning, I always push myself to eat that frog, eat the damn frog, all right? So face that task which you don't really like, whether it's making that customer call or whether it's just drafting up that report, something which, it's a sizable activity and you don't really like to do it, but just face it and get through it. All right, so do this. Why should you do this first? It's because once you do this, everything else is virtually easier. It's just downhill from there, and you have actually conquered the giant for the day. You've slain the dragon. All right, so eat the frog. But for some people, if you find this too daunting for you, you can actually explore the flip side, the exact opposite, which is actually to do the smallest item first. So at least you have some things to check off, and then you can slowly build up to the big task. But the reason why I like to eat the frog first is because I'm the most fresh at the start of the day. So I want to devote my best emotional juices and my best head space to this formidable task. Then I can do the other items as we go along, right? So eat the frog and check off the hardest thing in the day first. Okay, number two, tune out distractions. Oh yes, thanks so much for sharing that, Rachel. Yes, so eat the frog is an idea from Brian Tracy. So literally just face the giant of the day. And then after that, it only gets easier from there. Okay, so for this, tune out distractions. So optimize your mental and physical environment. So in terms of your physical environment, so what this means is that if you need to dedicate X number of hours or X number of minutes as focus time, if it helps to go to somewhere that's free from noise, whether it's a private meeting room, whether it's a conference room, or if your home is a bit noisy, if you're able to, maybe just head over to your local cafe. So whatever that best suits your situation. So that is your physical environment. So do what you can to declutter your space. So what helps me is that I function best when my desk is neat and tidy, because if there are physical mess around, it sometimes also makes my head very messy, because when I'm doing my work, I'll look at the papers and the files and the stationery around me. And then physical distractions can lead to mental distractions as well. Right, so optimize not just your physical environment, but also your mental environment. So what we mean by this is, if you're about to face a task that requires a lot of cognitive input, so if you're going to work on high-level strategic directives for your operations team, or if you're going to have a leadership meeting with other managers and executives, so things which require the best of your brain juices, right? So what you want to do is to declutter yourself mentally. So close other browser tabs, other windows, put away the news, put away other emails, things which are trivial and non-relevant, right? So that you can devote your sole focus on the task at hand, okay? So tune out the distractions. The next one, which I really, really like and has been really useful and beneficial for me, is to chunk your activities. So bundle similar work together. So what do we mean by this is things which are similar. For example, if you are making phone calls, make all your phone calls during the same period. All right. So so bunch your phone calls in that 1 or 2 hour slot. And then if you're responding to emails, do all your email responses at that point of time, right? And then if you're doing high level strategic thinking, focus on that. All right. So the worst thing that you could do is actually to switch from different activities to another. So for example, on one hand, you're doing a SWOT analysis, or you are surveying the competitive landscape for your company in your current industry. And then suddenly you decided to call someone to run an errand, and then you decide to flick through your email. And then by the time you get back to your strategy work, you have lost your train of thought. You have to reread certain texts. You have to get back to the zone. You know, it happens to the best of us. So it is this kind of switching cost that is very, very costly. All right, so bear this in mind. So if you're doing cognitive and strategic work, keep it, chunk it, put your phone on silent, put your status on Slack as a way, let things go to voicemail. If it's really urgent, they will keep calling. All right, answer your emails after. Then once you're done with that, then you can go to the emails. And then once you're done with the emails, then you can start answering your phone calls. Okay. Yes. So Betty has this question. So is this also a great way to get into a flow state regardless of the activity? Yes. So I find that if I focus on similar activities at one go, I can, my thoughts are not scattered. I can actually channel my focus, my attention, and my concentration on those tasks. So, and once you do that, it is actually a virtuous cycle, because once you are in the zone, once you're gaining good positive momentum and traction, you know, fresh ideas are starting to come, things are starting to make sense, and then you're coming up with great initiatives and all that. The words are just flowing and all. So keep on in that state, and then it just compounds in a positive way from there. And the last thing you want is if someone calls and if you don't let it go to voicemail, you pick it up, then you lose your focus state. Okay, so really, really guard your flow state. Okay, so chunk your activities. So if there are certain things within your calendar which you can bunch together, all right, so arrange them accordingly. So if you're doing one-on-one catch-ups with your direct reports, do it at a certain time of the day, so that if you're going from one meeting to another, you're in the same frequency. All right, so you can ride that momentum as we go along. Okay, so I've got another question. Okay, so what's the best way to declutter when you're too distracted mentally? Sometimes when I want to be productive in my tasks, I find myself distracted by my thoughts, so I end up losing focus. Okay, so one thing that's really helpful is to be self-aware. So having awareness is really important. So at different points in the day, just pause for 2 seconds and check in with yourself. So ask yourself if you're actually doing work that matters. Are you actually doing things that move the needle forward? Are you actually on track with your goals? Or are you just simply distracted? Or are you just simply, sometimes when your hands can get a bit itchy, you just want to look at the news, you want to look at some memes and all that. So a bit of those is fine, but if we are not careful, like we mentioned, we can actually end up spending too much time doing mindless scrolling. Right, so awareness is the best. And if you find yourself being very scatterbrained and very distracted, then start to take proactive steps to declutter. So if you're in a physical office and there's too much hustle and bustle around you, if you can, just take your laptop, go to somewhere really quiet. Right? Sometimes it helps. Sometimes literally just shifting your physical environment helps as well. Yes, that's a good one, Claudine. So having a list. Yes, so I always have a to-do list. I always put the high priority items at the top. always eat that frog first. And then if I find myself being distracted, if my housemate talks to me, if I get a phone call, if the postman comes in to drop off a parcel, and then I lose my train of thought, then I can look back at my list and push myself to get back in the zone, right? So different ways and different techniques. Yeah, so feel free to experiment with a few of them, and then you start to find things which actually work best for yourself and your situation. Okay. The next thing which is very helpful is to work in Ultradian sprints. So this means 90 to 120 minutes of focus time. All right, because they found out they've done a number of studies, and this is the optimum time. Like if you're doing really focused work, this is pretty much how much the longest your brain can actually sprint for. And then once you finish a certain sprint cycle, you can take a break. You can do whatever you want. All right, you can take a walk, you can go to the bathroom, you can make a tea, make a coffee, you can open Facebook for maybe like 5, 10, 15 minutes, right? Then after that, you can get back to work. Right, so Ultradian sprints are really, really helpful, especially if you're doing things that require a lot of brain juice, a lot of focus and concentration. Okay, so whether it's blocking out your calendar slots, putting a do not disturb notification on your instant messenger, so whatever works for you. Okay, so these are just some practical tools and handles which we can use to better manage our time. But we have one other meaty section, which is energy management. All right, so managing our time is really important, but managing our energy is actually even more important, because this is to do with the fuel we have. If we run out of fuel, if we burn out, if we run on empty, it's not sustainable. The engine will just sputter and fail soon enough. And then it doesn't matter how much time you have. If you don't have much energy, the time will be poorly spent. Okay, so there are some things which we can do to help us to optimize our energy levels. Okay, so the 4 golden rings, the 4 aspects of energy management. The first one is our body. So this has to do with your physical self, your physical state, you as a physical vessel, and your physical energy. Okay, number 1 is your body. Number 2 is your mind. So this is your brain health, your mental state, your focus, your concentration, your intellect. Okay, your cognitive functions. Number 3 is your emotions. All right, so how you're feeling right now. Are you exuberant? Are you expectant? Are you positive? Are you encouraged? Or are you skeptical? Are you uncertain? Are you indecisive? Are you edgy? Are you furious? Are you angry? Are you hangry? So your emotional state. Okay. Number 4 is your spirit. So your higher self, so to speak. So you can call this in a way, it's related to your soul. So this is like you being connected to the grand scheme of things, you being connected to the higher powers, you being connected to the universe, right? And for those who are religious, it could be your relationship with God, so to speak. Okay, our spiritual selves. Okay, so which means that we have physical energy, we have mental energy, we have emotional energy, and we can also have spiritual energy. And they are all intertwined, and any part that flourishes will benefit the other components. And likewise, any part that suffers will hinder the other components as well, because we are complex creatures. There's so many intertwined and interconnected parts. Okay, so let's just jump straight into our body. Okay, so how do you actually take care of your body? How do you optimize your physical state? Number 1, eat well. Make sure that you put proper foods in your body. Watch your diet. Okay, make sure that you're properly hydrated. Watch your glycemic index, especially if you're having a very heavy lunch, or especially if, you know, sometimes we like to snack on sugary foods, chocolates, sweets, biscuits, and all that. So be very, very aware of that. So if you're going to be having a an important client meeting, make sure you don't have a lunch that is too heavy, because you might have that food coma or that sugar crash and all that. So you want to monitor your energy levels. So whether for some people it's having smaller but more frequent meals, that's good. Whether it's abstaining from whether it's having less of carbs, or whether it's cutting down on sugars, for example, and all that, whether it's practicing intermittent fasting. So make sure you consult with your doctor or dietitian to find out what's best for you. All right, so eating well is very important. Number 2 is to sleep well. So your sleep hygiene and also the quality and quantity of sleep. All right, so what do we mean by sleep hygiene? Which means that before you sleep, make sure that you have minimal or no screen time. So don't go to sleep with you looking on your phone, going through your emails, looking at the news, looking at memes, looking at the stock market, looking at crypto, looking on social media, because that actually, I think it's blue light that actually keeps you awake. It might actually interfere with your circadian rhythm, right? So make sure you put your devices, your electronic devices aside. If you want to read a physical book, not a digital one, right? Because you want to minimize the screen time and the radiation and all that. Quality of sleep. So abstain from caffeine and alcohol hours before your sleep, because that can actually affect the quality of your sleep. All right. And then also quantity. Make sure you get enough sleep. All right. That's on the sleep side of things. Number 3, exercise well. So make sure you have enough movement, whether it's just taking a walk, whether it's just stretching, whether it's going for a run, and all that. So do things to actually increase the movement. All right, because this will actually enhance your physical state. So if you feel sluggish during the day, just stand up, just stretch, do some push-ups, do some crunches, do a bit of planking. Sometimes that helps, you know. Or if you want to, in terms of your workout, whether it's resistance training, have some exertion, do some cardio, work on the weights and all that. All right, so make sure we exercise well. And then number 4, work well. So observe our productivity cycles during the day, because it can actually fluctuate. For some people, they are the sharpest in the morning, or maybe just before lunch, or maybe towards the end of the day. All right. And some people might actually be very productive, especially if you're a night owl. You might be very productive at night when it's really quiet. But that being said, also make sure that doesn't impact on your sleep too much as well. Okay, so observe your productivity cycles during the day. If you notice that at certain period of time you are higher in energy, then you can actually put higher priority items during the peak of those cycles. Right. Then when you face a slump, then you can start to work on tasks which are more grunt work, more methodical, okay, more repetitive tasks. Okay, that is your body. Number 2 is your mind. So like we mentioned before, Ultradian sprints. So focus, concentrated, distraction-free time. And we've also mentioned this. So single tasking, bunch your activities together, do one thing until it's done, then you move to the next one. Multitasking is the greatest killer of productivity. You know, you might think that you're actually working on many things, but it's the switching time, the switching costs that will actually corrode our effectiveness. right? So do one thing until it's done, remove distractions. Strategic long-sightedness. So in the midst of things, when it's really busy, when it's crunch time, it helps to pause and just remind yourself of the grand scheme of things, the bigger picture, all right? So put things into perspective. Number 4, mental stimulation. So just like if you want a healthy body, you need to use your muscles, stretch your muscles, push your muscles. If not, you lose them. So use them or lose them. The same thing goes to our minds. You know, if you want to keep our minds sharp, if we want to maintain our edge, we need to constantly expose it to ideas that actually stretch our thinking and worldview. Right? So have good, meaningful discussions, debates, and conversations with people, explore different ideas and perspectives, right? Challenge your mind. Number 3, emotions. So how to better manage our emotions and also not to allow our emotions to get the better of us. So awareness is really important. So have a lot of introspection and self-reflection. When you're going into a meeting, if you feel edgy, if you feel heated up, take a moment to pause. If you have to, step away from the meeting room, step outside, get some fresh air, or turn off the webcam, mute yourself for a few seconds, take a deep breath, compose yourself, then get back into the fray, all right? Because you don't want to say or do things which you might regret later on. So if you feel that you're emotionally charged up, make sure you do things to actually cool yourself down. All right, dust it off. Number 2, meditation. So this has really been helpful for me, especially in times of stress. So breathing techniques, do deep breathing, have practice visualization. Right. So whether you visualize yourself walking through a forest or visualizing yourself laying down on the beach, hearing the crash of the waves in the background, to just ease your mind. Okay, sometimes that helps. Number 3, appreciation. So this really helps us to build up our emotional fortitude. You know, express gratitude to someone or something which you are really um, grateful for. You know, so whether it's sending someone a quick text message, sending them an email, doing a public praise or shout out, just saying that, you know, really appreciate you for being such a great team member. Thanks so much for the amazing work that you're doing. So it makes that person feel really appreciated. It makes that person feel good, makes us feel good as well. So why not share the love? Okay. And then number 4, reframing. So whenever we feel emotionally down, you know, sometimes you can feel like there's a huge cloud over your head. So challenge yourself to see things from a different perspective. Examine the self-talk, examine how you're talking to yourself, you know, examine and be aware of the internal monologue and the internal narratives that's going on in your head, because sometimes we can be our own harshest critics. You know, we can actually bash out ourselves um, if we're not careful. So we need to be very, very aware and cognizant of it. Yeah, so I think Matthias is saying a technique I've been using to clear my emotions was to walk or bike to and from work to have some fresh air. Yeah, before and after entering the office, and have 1 hour walk after work. When working from home, I go for a walk before work starts. Works brilliantly. Yeah, that's amazing. So like having some time with your family, having some time in nature, having some time in space helps, right? So find out what works best for you. Okay, last but not least, the 4th component is your spirit. So how do you actually boost your spiritual energy? Values alignment. So always um, go back to your values and focus on work that aligns with your values and your principles. Okay, that is values alignment. Value delivery is actually doing work that drives value and outcomes. So things that move the needle forward. And last but not least, contribution, right? So doing work that is meaningful, being of service to your the people around you, all right? Making a difference, doing things that is impactful, legacy, building a legacy, having a succession plan, investing in the next generation, right? Giving to the less fortunate, sacrificing, going the extra mile. So these are things that actually really drive, it's what makes us human, you know? So these are some things to bear in mind. The last practical handle which I want to leave with us before we spend some time with questions and answers is something as simple as an energy audit. So what does this look like? So it's just making a list of things that replenishes your energy. So what are some activities? What are some things that replenish your energy? Things that top up your fuel tank, energy sources. And then what are things which deplete your energy? So energy sinks. So things that really drain you, okay, so very simple list. And this is my example. So things that spark joy in Dom, energy sources. What are my energy sources? Having my space. I really love my space, whether it's in nature or whether it's just a conference room with no one. I like to have that quiet to actually do focused work. Being in nature, reading a good thought-provoking book, having a smooth drive. Really love those road trips. Stimulating conversations, thought-provoking materials, working on my hobbies and interests, having a good walk, hike, or run, or enjoying and savoring the quiet of early mornings and late nights, or late nights. Okay, so these are things which actually spark a lot of joy. Things that drain me, traffic, stuck in traffic, crowds, don't like crowded spaces, don't really like housework, don't like things which are messy, don't really like to spend too much time with negative people, don't like to spend too much time on the news outlets either. And then as much as I love my family and my friends, if I spend too much time with them, I need my space because I'm a natural introvert. Don't like to spend too much time deciding what to watch on Netflix, where you keep scrolling down and down and down, you haven't chosen anything after 2 hours, and also stressing out on what to eat. I know, first world problems. Okay, so this is something which you can use, so identify things that actually increase or give you energy, and also things which suck away your energy, and then spend more time on the energy sources and less time on the energy sinks.